So much.
Great. Hi, Ada. Great to see you. Oh, I love to help you raise money for your beautiful deodorants and Nala Care. Your body products are so amazing. You know I'm a fan.
Great to see you. Thank you. Excited, and it's nice to see so many people in the webinar. I think that's really
Yes.
exciting and encouraging.
I think there's over 100 registered. So I know not everybody can join us live, but it's always great to have the women here who can. So I see we're at 10:05. We want to jump in. I'm here with my colleague. I call her my partner in crime because we've been supporting equity funding for the last year or so. Erin Alexander. So I'm
Hi,
going to
everyone.
just get back to sharing the screen, changing my view so I can see. Yeah. Okay. Great. Welcome, everybody. We're going to jump right in and take you through the presentation. Today's focus is on our program Investor Speak. We call it a program info session, but really wanting to talk about sources of capital for your business with a focus on equity funding. So we will dive right in. And thank you, Jen, in the background for helping, letting people in from the waiting room as they join us, and also monitoring the chat. So if you have questions as we go through, we want to kind of keep this interactive, and answer your questions as we go along. So Erin is my partner in crime here today and on equity funding. Erin and I met through Women's Equity Lab. And so when we started this project, I wanted to bring Erin in, and she's just been a great support for the founders and really engaged with WeBC and a really great addition to the team. So welcome, Erin. Do you want to tell a little bit about your background?
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. No, I am privileged to now be part of Women Entrepreneurs of British Columbia, and as Melanie mentioned, we met at Women's Equity Lab, and I just saw the lack of funding provided to women, and I thought this is something that I want to get more involved with. And so Melanie said, I have a great program coming. Come on over, and here we are today, about to and tell you more about this exciting program, Investor Speak.
Great. Well, so great to have you as part of the team, Erin. And my background, I've been with WeBC almost 6 years. I'm a former banker, so very familiar with debt financing. And about 20 years ago, just saw the need for women to have women-focused support, which is the reason that WeBC exists as well. And so having joined up with WeBC just to support, my focus is really helping women get access to capital for their business, because without money, your business can't grow. And so that's what we love to talk about. WeBC is a not-for-profit organization that has been supporting women entrepreneurs for almost 30 years. We're government funded. We have a loan fund where we can do business loans up to $150,000. And then we have wraparound support that goes along with that. So business advice, skills development, mentoring, and a supportive community. So you've come in, if this is your first time joining WeBC for an event, there's so much more, and invite you to check us out on our website. So before we jump into the presentation and talking about equity funding, just like to acknowledge the land that we're on. I'm coming you today from the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations, and we really appreciate the First Nations who have been before us and protected the land, and also now teaching us so much about the land that gives us so much. So we really acknowledge that, and would invite you to know the land that you're on, and the people who have been there for since time immemorial, protecting that land. So moving into the topic today, sources of capital. I really just wanted to include this overview, there's many different places that you can get money for your business, including your own personal funds. You could use non-dilutive debt financing. There's many grants out there that you can access at different stages of your business. Then today we're talking specifically about equity funding, and there's also customer funded. So the, selling what your product or your service and generating cash flow for the business from your products and services and from your customers and reinvesting that into the business. Today, we're talking specifically about equity funding and why that is such an issue. This statistic here is women who are accessing money from venture capital get less than 2.3% of venture capital funding in 2020, which if you're trying to start and scale a business and not having access to the amount of capital that you need to help fuel the growth, really limits the potential of what you can do in the business. And, Aaron and I, we have talked about why that's a problem from the research. And Aaron, if you wanted to just talk a little bit about the problem of underfunding in the early stages.
Yeah, well, I think as that stat shows, there's definitely an obvious problem here. And the research shows, why women, there's this unconscious bias of being asked more difficult questions and obstacle questions, what we'll get more into. And therefore, they're less likely to get that investment. But the stats also show that women are more efficient with their investment. And, for every dollar invested in a women-led company, they're going to generate twice as much revenue as a male-led company. So we're trying to kind of flip the narrative and show, investors and VCs that this is a really smart investment, and women can do great things. We just need to get you trained and out there and more, and have the tools to be comfortable talking in front of investors.
Yeah, it's a good news story from the women's perspective. And I feel like we're the best kept secret of all these women-led businesses that are so efficient with capital and can create successful businesses where the investors aren't seeing the potential. And so part of this is helping women learn how to communicate with investors so that they can actually get that money. Because once the investors make the investment, they're often very, very pleased with how successful women and the way they operate their businesses.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious. What is it? For every dollar women-owned startups generate, there's 78 cents of revenue. And for men, there's 31 cents. So
yeah, really unbelievable. Yeah. And I think we really see that where the men just like throw out, these wild projections and have no idea how to get there, whereas women tend to be much more realistic and practical. So we should talk a little bit. We spent 2 days at the Innovate West conference, and it was just fascinating over those 2 days sitting in. So the Firehood is an organization that supports getting investors investing in women-owned businesses. And Danielle Graham organized, she had 99 women pitching, and maybe some of those women are here on the session today. But just like 5-minute pitches. So they would go in and pitch in dome number 1 to partners and investors. And if there was a strong pitch, they would be recommended into the second dome. And imagine a dome is like kind of an igloo, and it was plastic, but a hard plastic, and it had a zipper like a tent to open the flap to go in, and had these really comfortable camp chairs where people were sitting in. And so then the founders would go in and make pitch to the investors. And over the 2 days, they selected to the top 10. And the second day, they did a deeper dive with the top 10, and where they had an eventual winner who ended up getting $130,000 invested in their business from the investors, which we were listening to another pitch competition And in that, just general male and female, they got $20,000 investment. So it was absolutely phenomenal that these women had the opportunity to pitch for over $100,000 in investment. And actually, the second runner-up, they were so impressed with those founders that they found another 25,000 to invest in that. So it was really a great competition. But let's just talk a little bit about those pitches. And when we think about it here on this slide, you know, if you're applying for loans, the funder is looking for certain criteria. And if you're looking for investment, equity investment, the funders are looking for a different set of criteria. And so from some of those pitches in the dome, you know, what stood out for you, Erin?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of it was I could see a lot of the founders and entrepreneurs had obviously prepared their pitches and they were very clear and concise. And then when it came to the investor questions at the end, that's where the preparation lacked. And some of them, it was, as Melanie said, it was 5 minutes. So you only have a certain amount of time to get those investors' attention, keep their attention, and make them, you know, interested in wanting to invest in your company. And so it was fascinating to see how they were on track with the pitches, and then one question that would be hard and they get bogged down on the detail about talking about their competitors or talking about some, you know, details in their financials, which isn't really, which we're, you know, Investor Speed talks about, isn't what investors want to hear about. They want to hear the big picture and the big vision, and the huge growth that you have. So, I mean, they were great, and it was 5 minutes is tough to get your story across when you're so passionate. So I think seeing the variety and the range of questions asked from investors and how they the founders answered those and who was well prepared was very, very interesting
Yeah.
to see. Yeah.
Yeah, to see so many of them, one after the other.
Mhm.
And then to be in the dome while the investors were asking questions and to see the type of questions that they asked. So for me, what I really noticed was that stage of readiness for investment. And I sat in the first dome where there was the pre-screening for most of it. And I saw, you know, some of them I said, okay, here's my business card. Come on over and talk to WeBC, because you know you're not ready to move into that conversation with investors, but there's work that we can do to help you get ready for that conversation. And in some cases, you could see that maybe really all they needed was debt. They didn't need to give up shares in the company in order to achieve the business goals. And that if they just focused on the business plan and they focus on their cash flow projections and that ability to repay, they could get all the money that they needed through WeBC, through our $50,000 or $150,000 loan. Plus, we can work with the Women Enterprise Organizations of Canada and get another $50,000 loan. And so if you have $100,000 in debt, you know, you may be able to get build your business, certainly building value in the business, that then maybe take it to investors once you can show traction and you can show growth and you can show that market potential and you can show the team that you've built and you can demonstrate product innovation. So then it becomes really attractive as an equity investment after you've used debt to build to get to that stage. So so that was just kind of interesting seeing all of them.
You know,
So
I think
I
that goes
think
back to that funding puzzle that you talk about of, you know, what is the right
different.
funding options for you right at this stage, and maybe equity isn't at this stage and debt will help you get there. But to
Yeah.
think of that bigger picture for sure.
Yeah, and talking about the funding puzzle, I was sitting in one of the talks during the conference, and the founders, a woman founder, she was in robotics, and it was actually a session on robotics because the baby stroller was there, right? That robot baby
Yeah.
stroller, Gluckskind was there. It's so amazing where it just rocks without you moms used to
Hands-free.
have to
Yeah.
hand-free rocking, and it was really, so that robotic stage. But the founder was saying, I don't have a technical background, and I am a person of color, and I have all these barriers that investors don't see my potential very easily, which comes back to the unconscious bias. And so you really have to be creative and figure out how are you going to use the different sources of capital and continue to look for equity and the right investors who are willing to invest in the company, that see the potential, but realize it may not come fast enough. And so there's other sources of capital. And so keeping that whole funding puzzle in mind, and not just get focused on one type of capital or another. So it's really kind of a good takeaway for me from that session.
Yeah, because it really depends on what stage you're at, and you don't need to go, get equity funding when you don't need it at that moment. So
yeah. So let's move on and talking to investors. So just coming back to the questions that you were hearing in the dome, and you talk about getting into, the weeds and the details. When you only have 5 or 10 minutes to pitch to investors, where did you see sort of women then focusing on these kind of topics that we see on the slide now, these topics that lead to investment? And I guess I just want to point out that we know that these are topics to lead to investment through the Investor Speak program, because we've been working with the founder of the program, Dr. Ellen Farrell, who developed the console and developed the database of 100 questions, and knows the research of what are the topics to lead to investment. And that's the whole basis of the Investor Speak program, is learning what are the topics, how to recognize those questions, the obstacle questions that take you into the weeds versus the aspiration questions that take you into the money.
yeah, no, and I think that's a good point to say, is that, it's based on 7 years of research. So, they've watched videos of pitches and picked out certain words and ideas and concepts that are more likely to lead to investment. So it's quite interesting, and it's just a great guideline of, being able to control that conversation and talk about what you want to talk about and what investors want to hear. And we talk a lot about these obstacle questions, these more difficult questions that would get you into those details and negativity and what are your profit margins? Why, how are you gonna deal with these problems coming and that, and you don't want to talk about the problems. And so we in Investor Speak about how to convert and control that conversation and talk about these aspirational ideas. And it shows from the research that you talk about, these topics, and you are more likely to get, more investment for your company in a lifetime. So.
Yeah, it reminds me of a conversation that I had at the conference with a male investor looking at a particular company. And he said to me, well, I heard these founders were difficult to work with. And it just made me think afterwards, because I was then talking to the founders later on, and they were telling me, their motivation in what they were doing versus the motivation of the other people that they were working with. And it was in sort of an educational environment. And I thought, yeah, I can see where people might comment that they're difficult to work with because they had an entirely different motivation. They were very driven, they were very focused, whereas the others in this program were sort of just taking it for interest.
Mm-hmm.
And what struck me there is the investors will get caught up on something that makes it a reason not to invest. And we know through this program that if you're talking about the topics that lead to investment, so these are the things that the investors need to know to see the investment potential in your venture, then those are the things that stay in their mind and sort of push aside the reasons not to invest. So I think if this male investor that I was talking to saw that really had a really strong, understanding of the novelty of the product and the traction that they had to date and their roadmap, then that comment about them being difficult they wouldn't even pay attention to it.
Yeah,
And so
I
I
guess it
think,
goes back to that example of, a founder who asked, well, aren't they going to get mad if I don't answer that difficult
yeah,
question, that obstacle question that they're asking me? Are they not going to, find that frustrating, maybe difficult to work with and get that?
yeah,
And I mean, the answer to that is, well, obviously not, because they're more likely to invest in your company if you don't talk about that. So, we talk about how to be, politely convert and move onto an aspirational good topic, but don't feel like you have to answer all those difficult, challenging, detailed. You can always go back to those and again, just don't get back into the bogs of the weeds. And
exactly. Because through investor speak, the founders are learning to control the conversation and keep the focus on the topics that lead to investment. So that's really been an important learning. What else? Anything else? I just remember yesterday we were listening to the pitches on the men and women were pitching on the same stage, and there were 6 pitches. We were like, oh, obstacle question. And
yeah,
then we were listening to the response to see, oh, that was a good response. They made an aspiration response. So they were controlling the conversation and giving the right information, even though they got an obstacle question. So and it's also fun, we know, for the founders who are currently participating in the program to see the questions and go, oh, obstacle question, or oh, different questions. And so there's really this awareness
yeah.
coming
Well,
up
but I think
that,
it's great to go out, and if you're getting it starting to pitch, go and watch other people, listen and see, get feedback from them and what's
yeah,
difficult, see what questions are being asked and how to handle those. So
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay, I
but
see Irina, before we jump
yeah.
on to the next slide. Irina, do you have a question?
yes, would you prefer we ask questions at the end or is now okay?
No, go ahead. Like we'll stop. Sorry that we took so long, but we have
No,
a
no.
break now. So jump in. Let us know.
Yeah, it does feel like in a way we're like gamifying this, and I do think that eventually you will be found out, even if you do a really good pitch and answer all the questions. People can always like there's a signing agreement, right? You can't just go along with things, but it almost feels like a game where you have to trick the person into investing into your business or show your suffering has lasted long enough or like you've paid out of this or paid for this out of pocket. So could you just clarify like what is the point really here other than to show that you have a sustainable business?
Um,
Like
yeah,
what is the goal? Because I don't know. I understand it's important to have a really clear pitch.
yeah.
But I wonder if you have that, but you haven't figured out the rest, which would be considered going into the weeds. What happens? I don't know if I'm making sense.
Well, so what I think what I'm hearing you say is maybe like, are you earlier on in your venture? Because as you like, what we say is, first and foremost, you want to build a great company. You want to build a great business. And not so much worrying about investors. You build a great business that even with or without investors is a great business. And as you're doing that, you're building out the product, you're building out or the service. It can be a service business as well, as you're building out the team, you're building out your roadmap, and you're moving along. And what the capital does is just it adds fuel to that plan. So if you have the more capital you have, the more you can do, the faster you can go. And if you don't have as much capital, it just grows more organically, generally. I know there's sometimes you need the money in order to get to the next step. So first and foremost, you're building a great business. And then you're looking for the right investors. So you want to get to know the investors, and you want the investors to get to know you, and you want to have investors that are going to support your venture and are the right investors. And it's just a great story I heard at an event. There's a it's for people with disabilities, it's called the A-Linker, and it's like a tricycle where you are able to stand up. So instead of sitting in a wheelchair because you have mobility issues, you can stand on this kind of trike and be at eye level with other people. So it's a really great, great innovation called the A-Linker. And Barbara says, before I talk to anybody about money, I'm going to talk to them for 2 hours and just about what we're doing, and tell them about the business. And I don't even want to take their money or talk about money until they understand the business and I understand their motivation in wanting to align with us. And then if there's that partnership, that alignment of vision and values, then we can talk about money. And so I don't know if that answers the question. I mean, I get about the gamification, but what happens through this program is it's changing behavior. And what we see the automatic behavior for women is one of our participants, the professor asked, are you more sort of that growth oriented vision, seeing the future? Are you more sort of protection, safe, staying safe, looking at the risks and looking to avoid risks? Like, there's both sides in all of us, but where do you tend to live more? And the response was, well, when I'm by myself and I'm working on my business, I'm totally forward focused, vision focused, thinking about the future. But then I talk to investors and I kind of retreat into the other side. And what this program does is teach you to stay in the forward focused visionary side. And I think yesterday in the Grizzly pitches, it was called for the men and women, we saw 5 guys pitch and 1 woman, and the 5 guys were like taking over the world. They were like, boom, like they were, world domination, and they exuded world domination. And the woman, she exuded impact. She was changing the world, having impact, but in a very realistic way. And so it's the investors want to see the world domination. And that's not necessarily a natural place for women to be. But what we're trying to do through this program is help women get lots of money to reach their goals with their venture. And so the research shows the way to get that equity investment is through focusing on these topics. And it maybe starts as gamification, but then you develop quality responses on these topics. You learn to talk about your business, focusing on these topics. And that is what the investors are looking for. Because when you think about an investor in their lens, they're looking at ultimately every funder wants their money back. And so they're looking at how am I going to get my money back? And I want it multiplied 50x, 50 times or 10 times minimum. And so if you're taking money from investors, how are you going to grow the value in the business so that it becomes attractive for an exit? And usually that's acquisition is sort of the most common. So
yeah, and I guess it
yeah.
helps you learn through the role play of it. So you're not trying to change who you are or, what your vision, but it just helps you take that second, think about what we're going to talk about later, like your value proposition and what's really important to you and your business. And so that you just have that in a clear, concise way, and not just on paper on your business plan, you're actually talking to the console and you're getting direct feedback, and to learn through that role play. So then you kind of evolve yourself. And I know, until you practice something, you're not really sure. You may feel confident, but just growing and getting out there again. And once you're in front of investors, you'll have that confidence that you have behind closed doors. So. I see
Yeah,
another
great.
question.
Amanda.
Yeah.
Amanda.
Hi, thanks. I had the pleasure of meeting
Yeah.
you ladies for the last couple of days. I'm back in Prince Rupert. I flew home last night. But I just wanted to speak to the comments because I certainly don't ever want to come across as inauthentic. And so hearing you say, you know, present this idea of world domination, it sounds really on one level off-putting because you don't want to be inauthentic. But I can assure everyone on the call that by the fourth time I was sitting in the domes in the last couple of days, it's the excitement and the belief I have in the impact that we can do. It really is a global impact in the work that we hope to do. And so I did really end up in I want this to happen around the world and I want our company to be part of leading that charge. And so the global domination became authentic. And it's because I got to talk about the impact and really feel how we want to do business. And so I certainly would be one of the folks saying, I have to pretend I want to take over the world. And then when I think about it, I'm like, oh, I do want to dominate the globe. And so I just want to encourage folks. I think I pitched more in the last 60 hours than I have in the last month and a half or maybe ever. And if you really believe in the work that you're doing and the company's offerings, then it's actually not difficult to get to that place of presenting this global view. So, and it doesn't have to be inauthentic because it certainly wasn't for me. And I would not have imagined that I'd go full like Mr. Burns by the end of the few days being like, I want to take over the world for good. So, and in being able to see those pitches for the ones that were on stage, you do have to walk a fine line because the pitch from the woman was actually, in my opinion, the easiest one to hear and stomach. Some of the other guys, I was just like, okay. So I also think you want to present this really strong stance, but it can't. As a woman, I don't want to hear it being ridiculous, but I know that male investors probably listen to things different than I do as a woman. But anyhow, I just
Thank you for your comments, Amanda.
really,
And
it was really amazing.
I didn't want, Aaron and I was like, I don't want to vote. And Aaron's like, you have to make a decision. You got to make a decision. So I said, okay, I made a decision, but I'm not happy with those two choices. And I really wanted to vote for the woman because we thought, she could use the money. The guys are going to get it anyways. And she was really having an impact. So yeah, thanks for those
I think
comments,
that's great.
Amanda.
Be authentic, but be, excited about who you are and confident who you are in your product and your business. And I think that's what this program will help give you. It's not.
And thinking big.
Yeah, think
like
big.
we want you to think, what would you do with $1 million? What could you do in your business with $1 million? How would you use that money? And think really big. Carolina, am I saying it properly?
Yes, and I just wanted you to clarify something. So you mentioned that, so kind of the ROE that everyone's looking to get back, you said minimum, is that times 10? So like, let's say invest 100K, they're looking to get 10 times of that?
Yeah.
Minimum. Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. So really, really big numbers here. And so that's why you need to think about what would you do with $1 million and how do you, then scale your business so that you're generating really, really big numbers. So, and that's why equity investment is not for everybody. So let's carry on, just keeping an eye on the time. And for some reason, there we go. So we've been talking about the types of topics to focus on, and then the quality of your responses. And so, a really important one that you want to be able to tell everybody is your value proposition. So we talk about in the program, if you're to see somebody and they ask what you're up to, you're ready with your value proposition, and you think of it being about 45 seconds. So that you have, that elevator pitch. In 45 seconds, you can tell people your value proposition, which is, what problem are you solving? What is the pain that exists that your product or service solves? Who has the problem and is willing to pay your price for the product or service? And how does your company make money? So in a nutshell, the investors want to understand your value proposition. And when they listen to that 5-minute or 3-minute pitch or 90-second pitch, this is the bottom line they're looking for, to say, am I interested to learn more, or am I going to pass? And so you're trying to get them to be interested to learn more and understand your value proposition with these 3 points. Erin, you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I mean, and I think this value proposition, these 3 points are kind of the backbone and the base of why you're doing what you're doing and putting in all this hard work. It's what problem you solving, why do people want your product or service? And that's one, is it innovative? Is it different? And I guess, the second thing is, are people going to pay for this? Who is willing to pay for it, and really have a clear understanding that there is a market out there for it, and who is that target market? And investors want to see that you have that clear step and idea of who is actually going to go to and purchase, and how you're going to make that money. And that's what your business model is, and how are you going to generate that revenue and profit going forward. So
yeah, I think about the pitches that we saw, and you have 5 minutes. And so they come in and they sit down, and then they start with this blah, 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 blah. But the ones that really get your attention is they give you that pain point,
that pain point, yeah,
50 million people, are dying because of toxins in the dyes that we use in our textiles. It's like, okay, now I know the problem you're solving. And then, who has it? Who are you targeting? How do you make money? And you get right into the nuts and bolts in the first 15 seconds of the presentation, and then you go from there. And they really don't need to know, a lot of the fluffy stuff in the introduction. So really hitting hard with the value proposition. And then to the point is, so when we listen to women coming into investor speak at the beginning, and they say, tell us about your business, and those elevator pitches that we get in the beginning are really like sleepy, but through the course, the participants are learning to develop really good quality questions to this database of 100 questions that are typically asked by investors. And I think that's the real value. And then working through the questions and practicing, and that daily practicing is so important. So in terms of the funding puzzle, so as you're listening to this, really think whether equity funding is the right choice, the right type of capital for you, or can you start with debt, and can you get some grants and develop your funding puzzle that way? Like, if you're asking other people for money, it's time consuming. Even if you're applying for a loan, it's often time consuming. And so whatever you choose to do, recognize raising equity funding is time consuming. So Amanda was saying how many times you've pitched, and you just are pitching at every opportunity. You're pitching even when you're not pitching. You're pitching when you're talking to people, because you don't know who they know that might be interested in investing. You want to invite people, if you do decide to go to the equity funding route, invite people to be part of your journey. And one of the sort of hesitations we see participants come into the program with is, I hate asking for money. Well, you're not asking for money. You're inviting people to support and be part of your journey. And Erin and I, through Women's Equity Lab, we're invested in companies, and we get really excited about the journey, like Chiwis. Who doesn't love Chiwis fruit chips? And when we see it on the store in London Drugs or Save on Foods, it's like, yeah, that's one of the companies we supported. So we're really engaged in the journey that they're doing, and it's much more than just the investment. So you're giving people the opportunity to be part of that journey with you in your business. There is a whole industry looking for investable businesses. And so if you're into this program, you're learning how to communicate to get some of that equity funding. And it starts through angel investors, early stage investors, so you can grow the value in the business. And then as it has more investment potential, then the venture capital come looking to invest in your business. It's really great for us to support women along that journey. And then taking the time to find investors. So don't say yes to everybody. Vet your investors, find out what their investment potential is. I know before we ever started doing this program, some of our loan clients were looking for investors, and they did find investors, and it didn't always go well. In fact, several times it didn't go well at all, and so you don't, if you can avoid it, not be in that situation. You want to find people, and recognizing in a business as you're building it and growing it, there are ups and downs. With any type of funding, there are ups and downs. A business is not, hockey stick growth all the time that the investors look for. You may have to go back to your investors and ask for some more money. You may have to come back to your lender and ask for some interest-only payments. And so having a good relationship with your funder is important, and they will support you if you keep them up to date on what's happening and what you're working on and what the future looks like for the business. And sorry, my slide got stuck again. All right. So I want to leave more time for question and answers, but also to speak specifically about what's involved in the Investor Speak program. So Erin, do you want to go through this?
Yeah, sure. As it says here, we're going to start another cohort in May. And it's a great group of women that we try to put together. So the cohorts are small, and so there's also that community and that support within that group. So we initially meet up for around 2.5 hours, and we'll go in more detail about what the program offers. We'll go through some of the instructional material. You'll see in a lot more detail about those aspirational concepts and those obstacle questions and how to convert and kind of get into the detail of that. And then we meet up on a weekly basis. Well, the same hour we try to do each week that works for everybody. And that's just a mini meetup and a catch up to review some questions that you've maybe struggled with over the last week, or touch base on something that it's exciting that's happened in the last week. Someone maybe be pitching and they're want some help with this, and just be a supportive group for that hour. And then we do expect everyone to go in the console and really practice those questions on your own time. So we say about 15-20 minutes a day to get in, and you get immediate feedback and move forward with that. So it's great that the console and the database of questions is awesome. And then there's also a Discord channel which connects all of us across Canada who are taking this Investor Speak course, and there's just support there for events, activities, competitions, articles, everything.
Cheering people on.
Cheering people on, seeing the success stories. It's a really big growing community of women founders across Canada. So that's been great. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of the successes is there's a Total Mom Pitch, which is gets applications from across Canada, and they just announced the top 5. And Mickey Talibi with Ume Smoked Tofu is in the top 5 this year. So we're really excited that she's going to put her Investor Speak skills to work to win the competition.
Well, that's what, when she started the course, she had never pitched. She hadn't pitched once.
Yeah, she's doing a great job.
Just kind of worked hard in that console, and her business it's growing. So it's great. It's really exciting to see. Yeah.
So there is the URL here. You go onto our website, and there's an application form to fill out. And then we screen through the applicants to select participants for the program, but we want to connect with you. So, if you're interested, you can either connect with us to just have a conversation, or if you want to apply, if we don't see or not able to take you into the program, we connect you with a business advisor who can help you in other ways and maybe get ready for down the road. We also have this new on-demand programs, which are available 24/7 in key areas for business skills. Our HR, financial fitness talks to you about how to read financial statements, preparing cash flows and budgets, and then strategic marketing. And these programs help you fill in your knowledge gaps. We know a lot of founders don't come from a business background, and so these are just the basics that you need to know in each of these critical areas. They're free, they're online, they're available 24/7, and so we encourage you to check those out and fill in any gaps that you may have. We also have some other upcoming programs that are available, future webinars, just really great conversations on different topics that we encourage you to join. Justine, we can open it up for questions now if others want to pop either questions in the chat or other.
I just had a quick question. I did already apply for the course, and I'm
Okay.
wondering when people hear.
Yeah, so we have a ongoing, and we're just trying to figure out when the next cohort is and the dates and so on, and then get the applications in and select from there. So thank you very much for applying, and yeah, we'll be in touch.
Yeah, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, thank you. Irina?
Hi, what are some of the reasons you might redirect someone from this program?
I mean, I would say if you're just not quite ready for venture capital or equity at this stage of your business, if you're, because we did talk about looking for that huge growth and what VCs want to see, or even angels. So it might be like, oh, right now is not the best time. Let's work on this, let's grow, and maybe in 6 months or a year, wherever. And as Melanie says, maybe equity funding isn't the right thing for your business. It could be that's just, and Melanie has talked about the different loans that WeBC can help you with as well.
Yeah, I think about some of the people who have applied. Probably the ones that stick out for me is their business is not on a growth trajectory. Their business maybe has plateaued or stabilized, and they're kind of looking for that injection, that something to give them the oomph, and maybe an investor will come along. And that's not what the investors are looking for. The investors are looking for a leader, a leader with a vision, a leader with a growth roadmap, a leader that can see that, world domination growth. And so if your business is kind of plateaued and you're looking for that sort of injection, the investor, they do not want to run your business. They do not want to have to spend hours and hours in your business to get it up and going. They want to see you have the internal motivation and drive, and you have the roadmap to grow and get that 10x return for their money. And so part of what we need to see is, is your business at that stage where it has that investable interest that the investors are looking for. But having said that, there's all kinds of investors out there, and we may not have seen an investor interested in that area, but if you can demonstrate that you've got that growth orientation, that roadmap, that direction of, how much money do you need to raise and what would you do with the money? Those are the kind of things that the investors look for. And then it's up to the investors to decide whether or not it's something that they want to invest in. And the other is, you may not sort of be able to go to traditional investors. You may have to really search out places, and we're finding that a little bit in the food businesses. Traditional investors, they kind of not so interested in food. Of course, they like tech, tech. Software as a service is really popular in BC. Robotics, not so much. Other markets like robotics better. So those are all the kind of nuances. And we're not judging the type of business, but we're looking for is that investable, is there the roadmap and the 10x potential and the exit. That gives you some guidelines. Anyone else have questions, or we can look through the chat? Let's see.
Yeah,
Yes,
I put the link up there for the application and additional information.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, anyone wants to see that?
Is the program free is a great question. We have funding through the end of the year. And so there is no charge, but there is a commitment. And we do have you sign a participation and mentorship agreement that if you don't fully participate in the program, and we understand that things come up and happen, but that there is a fee to you for not completing the program, because it took a spot from people who didn't get a spot. And so we'd like to recoup some of that money so that we can then offer the program to somebody else. Sarah.
Thank you. When you say exit, do you mean like the investor's exit or the founder's exit from the company with profit?
There is an exit on the company, which someone buys the shares. And so the investors get their money back. And ideally, sometimes it involves the founder staying. Usually, they want you to run the company.
Yeah, for at least a certain amount of time.
Yeah. Yeah. Mina?
Hi. To be accepted in the program, do I need to be generating revenue, or can this be kind of pre-seed? I have a prototype. It's a SaaS company, and it does require my platform uses AI, and so I'm just wondering at this point. I just have a prototype, and my funding is the funding I require is for an MVP. So I'm just wondering, could I qualify for this program?
Erin?
Yeah, I mean, it's having no revenue is not a
No.
it doesn't have to check that box.
Okay.
However, I think it goes back to what Melanie's saying is that, if you're going out and you're pitching to VCs and you're not generating revenue at this moment, you have to be able to sell and prove to them that you're going to have exponential growth in the next, whatever your runway is, 18 months. And what milestones are you going to hit with that funding? So, maybe one of them is become revenue positive. So I guess the quick answer is no, you don't have to be necessarily generating revenue to be accepted in the program.
One of the questions here was Shay asks, as someone in the arts, I really struggle with my value proposition not being abstract. So this is where through the program, you're working on your value proposition, right? So you create a value proposition, you're practicing it in the console. As trainers, we can see your response is transcribed, and we can go in and see that. And so we may, work with you on that. Certainly, you might ask a question in the mini meetup and says, oh, I'm struggling. And so we can help you with that, and you can ask one-on-one, I need some help. And so we are helping you through the program to develop quality responses. And it doesn't come out right the first time. It takes many iterations, and you practice it on people and you see you're not really getting that connection. So you refine it some more, you try it different ways. And so there really is an iteration process to work on the quality of your responses. And we see that in founders who pitch like over years, because they're raising not only the first round of equity, but they're doing multiple rounds. They're pitching in different competitions. I think of Carlin Lonkarik at VotaSafe, who won the forums pitch for the purse or pitch last year. I mean, she's just become such a great pitcher because she's done it so much and really refined the language, the responses, how she answers questions. So it is, you get better by practicing and doing it. And that's really the value of the console through Investor Speak, is that quality and practicing and really learning and the behavior change, so your responses just become automatic. All right, well, I see we are at time.
Melanie, I would have to launch the poll if that's okay.
Oh,
No.
yeah. Thanks, Jen. So thank you so much in the background, Jen, all these people. It's great to have so many people on and have so many of you interested. We hope Erin and I have been able to answer your questions and share information and have you take away some information. Please reach out to WeBC. Let us know how we can help. If you have specific questions, our business advisors are available to help. Yeah. Good luck to all of you wherever you are on your entrepreneurial journey. It is a journey. You learn by doing, and you trip and fall and you get up and you keep going. Entrepreneurship is like a roller coaster. And we see that with our founders in the program that have some incredible highs and some really incredible lows. But they just keep going, and ultimately they're successful, and we just love to celebrate the successes along the way.
Yeah, thanks for joining and taking the time, as we know it is quite a journey and that you're all very busy. So appreciate coming and hearing more about this program and hearing some of your great questions.
What a gift. Thanks for doing this, you two. Learned so
Yeah, you're
much.
welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, any last questions? I mean, if somebody is here, don't hesitate to ask while we're on.
I was just seeing if there's any in the chat still that I could follow up with. But
I have a question. How do people invest in clinical medical practices? Is that something that investors like to do?
it's a hard Melanie.
Sorry, I missed a question.
I'm a clinical herbalist and I have a one-on-one private practice, but I'm a medical herbalist, so I formulate for people with plants.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
wondering if if this is popular. You know, it's a niche. Obviously, people go see their doctor, but I specialize in one-on-one herbal medicine and investigation. I'm wondering if it's something investors are actually interested in.
Yeah, well, I think if you found it,
Clinical.
then this is a more specific, investor, as Melanie mentioned. There might be somebody in your network, or like an angel investor would probably be your best, or someone like a strategic partner who would join with you as well. That would probably be a better, more focused target of who you'd pitch to. I don't know, Melanie, if you.
Yeah, I mean, when you bring investors, then you have this responsibility to keep them up to date, to share your progress with them. So there's a lot of extra overhead in keeping those investors in the loop, if you will. And so the question I always ask is, well, can you do what you want to do with debt? What can you do with 20,000, 30,000, 50,000, or 100,000, and building the business that way. And perhaps down the road, there might be something that you create that becomes investable. A lot of founders will use their experience and working with clients to see a gap that is lacking. They see a pain that they can solve, and then maybe from there you create something that's attractive to investors. So this program is really intended for, going out and raising capital from a group of angel investors. And probably in what you're describing at the moment, there's nothing really unique and innovative. There's a lot of other people doing it, and they also don't see that, well, how are you going to grow this? Like, one of the questions in the Dome yesterday was founder was asking for 350,000, and the investors asked, well, once you reach your milestones, what is the milestone? And she said, I want X number of clients. And the investor said, and then what? And she didn't have an answer, because for her, she just thought, well, I just want to get this many clients. But for the investors, they're looking like, well, then where do you go from there? And so,
Go
yeah.
ahead. I was going to say, think about, as Melanie was saying, like, what do you want for your business? You know, do you want that 10x growth, or do you just want to run a viable business for yourself and your family? I think, you know, sometimes it's, you know, going to venture capital and having the big 10x dream that might not be what you want. But that's what angels and VCs want. So make sure you're aligned.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Great questions.
You're welcome. Okay. Thanks, Erin.
Hi, do you have time for one more question?
Sure do.
Okay, so I've got a subscription as a service startup that I'm working on, and I'm currently going through the Viatech market value training playbook online series. And the way it works out is I'm not able to speak to a mentor until, like, my first mentor I'm going to speak to, I think, in June. And I'm wondering if this would be an appropriate time for me to be signing up for your, you know, or applying at least for this Investor Speak program, because I can see for me the value in it, and that I really do need to practice. I haven't had any practice in terms of being in front of investors, but I'm also concerned about how I'm being I feel like I'm not getting the feedback I need currently in order to get the whole playbook thing down, right? I was just wondering what you think, what you would recommend.
Yeah, I think a lot of the founders and applicants that we see have gone through some of the other programs, like the one that you're doing. And that's really helpful, because you're then, you know, that market validation is a really important piece to see that you have a venture that the market, they have a target market. That's part of the value proposition.
Okay, well, I should add that I have already been through that whole process previously.
Okay.
And, you know, so I have been at Startup Alley, at the Viatech Startup Alley last year, and it was like,
yeah,
there was an enormous interest. I had my prototype and that sort of thing.
Okay.
A few personal things came up, so I was kind of delayed.
Yeah.
But the idea was that I was going to jump into this program so that I could be basically guided to prepare to speak to investors. But now what I'm finding is I'm not able to access those mentors
right
as you know, as quickly as I would like to. So
right.
value proposition, like a lot of the stuff in the form of the playbook, I already have the answers to, but I would like some sort of confirmation on certain aspects.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't want to bore you with the details, but
Sure.
basically it has to do with that, the whole thing where you're talking about as the founder and leader of the company, when I'm presenting, am I presenting, you know, people want the benefits of meditation, but, you know, it requires a lot of effort. And, you know, I've developed a software program that will train the brain using its natural ability to follow frequencies to move into this healthy state, and you get the benefits, you know, without the effort. And you can also measure it. So that's one aspect of it. But the other aspect is, okay, so there's this meditation market, but there's also the optimal performance market. And then there's the market for people who are struggling with mental health issues like attention deficit disorder, depression, addiction. So I do have that future looking thing, but my problem right now is, where am I putting this in this playbook, and who is this playbook targeted for? And I don't have answers to it. So I don't know, maybe I should be working with a different group altogether to get this underway, or I don't know. I don't want to take up much more of your time, because it probably isn't that pertinent to your.
I mean,
no, it's a great question. We don't mind at all.
If maybe, you know, a business advisor that we have at WeBC to have those first initial discussions.
Well, it doesn't hurt you to apply, Sue.
Yeah.
You know, because you've been through these programs, and that's what we're saying is you've been through these programs. That is helpful in your application because you've worked through a lot of those. Yeah. Like you kind of know what you're getting into more so than somebody who doesn't, you know, hasn't been through any of those. No, where it's not a prerequisite, but.
Okay. And I think I may have applied for this last December. Was there like a January or February intake? Or
yeah, what's the name of the company? Or
Neurotech Integrated Ventures.
Okay.
And you know, so I do have like a website up and running. The interesting thing, I guess, like what's happened with me is, you know, when I first started, the technology was based on the television as a platform, the big NTSC TVs, and overnight everybody switched to the flat screen.
Oh yeah.
Eventually, virtual reality came in, and that became a really good platform. But now with AI and everything, I'm leaning to something much more affordable, where you know you're just using a Google Box and a smartphone. So I'm evolving with it, and as I, you know, as time passes, the product's becoming much more viable and much more timely, because stress is, you know, I mean, the WHO has declared it an epidemic, right? And people are looking for non-drug based solutions to their mental health issues. But yeah, I'm kind of feeling like I'm in molasses in winter or something. It's like, okay, you know, if I could get the exact answer to that particular question, I could move ahead. But I'm kind of just looking for my person to be working with on this, because I am on my own at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any suggestions or recommendations. And here I am.
Well, we can take this offline, Sue. We'll look and see if we have your application, and then we can follow up. And you know, it's always hard to give a response based on a 5-minute, like it's complicated. And
it is complicated,
so,
and I'm
but we're happy
looking that up. That would be great.
Yeah, we're happy to work with you and see how we can support. And yeah, it's a journey. So yeah, we'll take it offline. I mean, you know, maybe let me just get, what's your surname just in case?
Powers, Powers. And I can just put my email address in the.
Okay, that would be great. And then we can catch it.
Okay.
Yeah, I see we have others that are hanging around. Do you have questions? We're happy to answer any questions for you.
May I ask some question, please?
Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I have a product which is from different country. It's cosmetics, niche cosmetics from Ukraine, and I'm like a dealer. So is it a good idea to find investor to open several marketplaces, like where I could sell it? Because it's very popular in Europe and in Ukraine. They have a lot of places of sell. And I don't know if it's a good idea to like to find investor here in Canada to make it even popular here. What do you think about that? Thank you.
I mean, again, I think same with Sue, it's hard to give a general overview with 2-second questions. So I think if there's any kind of bigger questions and ideas about that, if we could get your contacts as well, and then take it offline and see if there's a business advisor we can connect you with, or have a more lengthy conversation. Oh, there we go. There, I see some emails. Do you want to pop your email in the chat?
Yeah,
or you can connect. Yeah, and then we can, and then you know, we'll have a bunch of follow-up questions and better understand what you want to do.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. There we go.
Thanks, Erin.
Perfect.
I do have a quick question as well. Are you from Kelowna? Both of you?
We're both in the Lower Mainland.
Lower Mainland? Oh, okay.
Yes.
So I'll try and make this short. My laptop's about to die as well.
Okay.
So I was the manager at a very successful day spa that closed suddenly about a month or two ago now, about a month and a half ago. So that has left myself as well as my entire team without work. So I am looking to start my own business now. I worked for the same company for over 10 years and I was managing for the last 5. So I am completely capable of running the spa. It is a classic day spa essentially, but I do want to add some other healing modalities, and I feel like I have a really solid business plan. My issue is to get this off the ground, and I've actually been working with a realtor and I have a location in mind. I need the funding to get this off the ground pretty much immediately. So I'm working on a very quick timeline. So I'm taking as many courses as I can, and learning as much as I can on my own. But it's definitely a bit of a roadblock at this point where I need to get funding quickly and efficiently, and then get this ball back up and running and rolling. There's essentially a storage unit that has everything that I need to open the spa in it from the old spa. So supplies, everything. I have connects with the suppliers, everything that is needed. Like I can hit the ground running any day. I literally just need the funding to get it off the ground. And I know there's a lot of hoops to jump through these days. So because I am on a bit of a fast track, do you have any advice for me with that? And then the other part of that is that I have an investor, but I'm a little bit wary about how this is going to look. If he wants shares in my company, if this is a loan type of agreement, that hasn't been decided yet. It's just in conversation at this point, and I just want to make sure that I'm doing it properly.
Melanie,
That's
a
a big question.
Yeah.
So my observation after doing this for so long is when you're using other people's money and you're asking other people for money, it doesn't go quickly. So at WeBC, we're a viability lender. It takes us time to go do the diligence to understand the viability of your business. If you're talking to investors, it actually takes months. They need to get to know you and they need to do a deep dive into all your documents. And so the next step is setting up a data room. And there's a very involved process in working with investors. So that's, I guess in terms, if you have a good credit score, if you have a strong personal net worth, BDC will offer money and that you can apply online. And that's really, but no, using other people's money, it does take time to find the right connections. But we're happy to work with you. If you want to chat with a business advisor, we can maybe look at some of the options. All right. Anybody else?
I wonder if her
Yeah, seemed to come off.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. Good.
Anita, do you have any questions?
No.
Okay. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining us, and please connect with us at WeBC if you have further questions. We'd be happy to help. Thanks, Erin.
Thanks, Melanie. Bye. Thanks, Jen.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jen. Awesome job.
Thank you very much.
Well, have a good one. Bye.
You too. Thanks, Jen. Bye.